I embraced that old wounded Katie in that spot where she knew she needed to walk away, didn't want to. That old Katie was excited and hopeful, and she wished for a different outcome. That old Katie ignored her gut, her intuition, her misgivings. But the new Katie was stronger and clearer and more convicted. And so instead of shaming the old me, I just loved her. I honored that there was wounding here, that there was a need, a longing, sadness. And then I invited her to come be with the new and improved version of me, the version of me who doesn't self-abandon, the version of me who, even when she's attached to an outcome, is willing to let it go if it means choosing herself, not betraying herself. Welcome to the Intrepid Soul podcast, where we explore what it takes to build a human life that's congruent with your soul. I'm Katie Benway, a mystic, teacher, and author, here to walk with you through the wilds of the human experience as we get to know and get closer to the soul. Let's get curious, courageous, and conscious together. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Intrepid Soul podcast. And if you're new, I'm so glad you're here. Today, I want to chat with you about purpose, about the nature of a spiritual life. And I want to tell you something that I was wrong about and where I am on it now. So when I first started doing this work, one of the common questions that I would get is, Katie, what's my soul purpose? Can we look at what my purpose is? And I really believed in that idea. I talked about it. I had on my website, let's get into and let's look at your soul purpose. And I have to say that over time, I stopped talking about purpose in that way. And I took it off my website as a thing that we could discover. And here's why. I still believe that we have soul purpose. Each of us is a soul, and we come here for profound, transformative reasons. But instead of believing that soul purpose is some kind of exciting headline or special identity, or frankly, kind of connected to the ego, something that we could get big and proud and puffed up about, I really believe that our purpose is universal, simple, and yet incredibly deep. I believe that our purpose, yours and mine, are to get to know ourselves, to become self-aware and understand ourselves so that we can root out the ways that we are not embodying and living congruently with the soul, with the spirit, with our authentic selves. And root those places out, discover where they are, and heal them so that we become conscious. Conscious is being self-aware of who I am, understanding that I am incredibly powerful and what I offer to the world is incredibly important, and I must take responsibility for that. I think that the soul loves to get to work. I think the soul really wants to get in and get embodied and get physical, and that's certainly what we do here on a human level. We immerse ourselves in the living and everything that comes along with the living, all of the lessons, all of the triumphs, all of the tragedy, because the soul is interested in transformation. And transformation comes when what we thought we knew about ourselves is no longer true. When people experience the death of loved ones, when people experience illness, accidents, And likewise, when people experience joy and creativity and creation, these moments where something bigger appears, these are the moments where our soul is revealing itself to us, where we discover who we really are. And our responsibility is to listen and pay attention and allow those discoveries to change us, propel us into becoming a more whole version of ourselves. I talk a lot in my work about telling yourself the truth. And I talk about this a lot because I haven't met anyone who, when they tell themselves the truth, doesn't begin some kind of existential process. And I'll underscore that point by saying it in the inverse. When you don't tell yourself the truth, you stunt your growth. You stop moving. You create a block in the spiritual energy. Truth has a gravity that literally becomes its own life force. And when we meet life's moments, whether they're tragic or triumphant, and we tell ourselves the truth about what these experiences are revealing about ourselves, there's like a new force that begins, a new life force, a new kind of organizing reality that starts to take shape in our lives. And when you're in that place of truth, it's as if something has begun and you can't ever stop it. Once you start telling yourself the truth about who you are, what your experiences are, what you've learned, you can't go back. The path is circular. It's not linear. And when you are doing your healing work, when you are endeavoring to get more conscious, to be someone who lives in alignment with the soul, you will at times feel like you've gone mad, because you will walk this path and it will be circular, and you will come back to the lessons that you thought you learned and you thought you had them squared away, but you're here again. And if you find yourself in that place, please take heart. You're not relearning old lessons. You're back at this spot, discovering nuance. You're back at this spot to pick up another piece. I remember in my life, there was a time when a lot of the healing work that I had done around ways that I abandoned myself, really like routinely abandoned myself, especially in relationships, taking care of other people, suppressing my own needs, making it about the other person. I had done a lot of work on this, and I was really proud of that work, and I was relieved about that work. I was happier in my life and living in a better place. And I got into a relationship, and within a matter of, I'd say like 2 months, it became really clear that this was a relationship that was of old patterns. And the relationship ended, and there was all kinds of, drama or difficulty about it. But the hardest part of it for me was a devastation that I felt around, oh my God, I've done it again. I've repeated a pattern that I thought I had healed. Here I am in this relationship, and I've done all of this work because I don't want to have relationships like this. And here I am. And I'll add that part of the dynamic was I was lied to in this relationship. Really sort of a bold-faced, unabashed, horrible lie. I was lied to. And so not only was I kind of imploding around, oh my God, we have these same patterns, I was shaming myself and beating myself up for being lied to, being someone who could be lied to. And it caused this crisis of self, of faith, of consciousness, where I doubted the healing that I had done for years, where I doubted my ability to attract something healthy. I was imploding about, why do I attract people who lie to me? Why do I believe people who lie to me? Well, I must have done something in another lifetime to deserve this. There must be some karma. Hi there. Just wanted to tell you about the upcoming sovereignty ceremony. This year will be the 4th annual. We started this back in 2021 as a way to honor the end of the calendar year without getting into heavy New Year's resolutions and goal setting and new beginnings. Because the truth is that in the middle of winter, the end of December, the start of January, this is not actually our natural New Year. Our natural New Year happens in the springtime. And so the sovereignty ceremony is a way to work with nature. It's a way to acknowledge that the calendar year is coming to a close. And we call back our energy. We call back what belongs to us. We release what doesn't belong to us, what is no longer helpful or useful or in our highest and best honor. We do a psychic and energetic cleanup of our bodies, our being, our energy field. It's a lovely way to go inward, to take good care of your psychic and energetic space in honor of the end of the calendar year. All of the busyness and all of the interactions, all of the stuff that's going on that may be cluttering up your space. It's a really lovely, gentle, intentioned clean out and clean up. It's a sacred ceremony, and I do hope that you will join me. This year, it's on Sunday, December 28th, 2025 at 11 a.m. over at the Intrepid Soul Collective on Patreon. I was really disturbed and saddened because I had done so much work in my life, particularly around relationships and healthy relationships. And why, oh why, had I attracted, vibrationally attuned to something that was a lie, that was toxic, that was dysfunctional? And so I let myself feel all of that. And when I tell you it was a crisis, it was a crisis. I really felt like all the years of work and healing I had done were for nothing. And I know better, by the way. I know better. I teach differently. I hold people daily going through this, and I still thought that I had magnificently fucked it all up. It was real. The crisis of faith, of consciousness, of self-awareness was real. And here's what helped me out of it. I stopped at some point and I said, all right, what does this situation want to teach me? Because there's no way it's objectively true that my healing work was for naught. There's no way. There's no way that I haven't healed. There's no way that I haven't shifted. There's other areas in my life where I have really clear proof that I've shifted. So, okay, I have healed and I have shifted. But if I believe that there's something bigger going on, if I believe that my soul is always learning, my higher self is always guiding, my guides are always directing me, and if I believe, and I do believe, that we have experiences to bring us more conscious, then what was this experience for? How did this experience make me more conscious, i.e., make me more self-aware? So I started there. That's how I started to dig myself out of the hole. And I asked myself, okay, Katie, what are you more conscious of at this point? Well, I could admit to myself that there were some misgivings I had early on in the relationship, that there were some red flags, and I ignored them. That deep in my body, I had felt unsure. I had felt some misgivings, and I pushed through them. Okay. And so I investigated that. What prompted me to push through them? Well, two things. One, I really liked this person. Okay. Two, I thought that I was breaking an old pattern by staying and investing versus closing up shop and leaving. Okay, fair. So I got clear about that with myself, that some of what allowed me to push through my misgivings was a genuine curiosity about, Is this a pattern that I need to break? Could I stay here and do something differently? But once it was clear that this wasn't so healthy, I did self-abandon. I didn't respond immediately. I stayed in it. Okay, so there is the piece, right? This isn't a full-scale, Katie, you failed. This was a piece. I had a spot where I was still self-abandoning. And I told myself the truth about that. But do you notice that instead of shaming myself, instead of self-abusing and driving myself into the ground, I paused and looked at it. I applied consciousness to the situation, and I was able to identify the part where I was learning the lesson. And so I embraced it. I embraced that old wounded Katie in that spot where she knew she needed to walk away, didn't want to. That old Katie was excited and hopeful, and she wished for a different outcome. That old Katie ignored her gut, her intuition, her misgivings. But the new Katie was stronger and clearer and more convicted. And so instead of shaming the old me, I just loved her. I honored that there was wounding here, that there was a need, a longing, a sadness. And then I invited her to come be with the new and improved version of me. The version of me who doesn't self-abandon. The version of me who, even when she's attached to an outcome, is willing to let it go. If it means choosing herself, not betraying herself. The new version of me that is willing to feel loss and pain, especially when it means that I haven't abandoned me and betrayed myself. And so you see these patterns and themes that I thought I had worked on, and when they came up again, I felt terrible and awful, thinking, oh my God, I've made no progress. When I actually worked it through, it turns out I'd made a lot of progress. But there was a piece left. And here's the other thing I realized about that piece. The piece of healing was around embodiment. What does that mean? It means that there was a part of me that conceptually understood what it meant to not abandon myself, but I wasn't acting like it. I wasn't integrating it into my being, my decision-making, my physicalness, my choices. I wasn't embodying it. So I knew conceptually I had done a lot of that healing work, but I needed to act like it. And this is, I really think that this is one of the moments that we get tested on a lot. And those of you who've worked with me know that I don't really like to talk about this in terms of testing. And I'm not crazy about saying like divine or universe tests us. But for the purposes of this conversation, it's useful. I think that when we experience these tests, they're tests of embodiment. Are you willing to become what change you've been working on? Are you willing to act like the healed version of yourself? Because that embodiment, the acting like, the being changed, it comes at a cost. Usually the cost is our comfort. We're so comfortable and familiar with the old pattern. Sometimes the cost is a relationship, usually, right? Like friendships or relationships, or like we're no longer willing to abide by behavior or a lack of behavior. Oftentimes getting integrated and embodied, becoming the changed version of yourself is going to cause you to create new boundaries and new codes of operation, new codes of like ethics and values in your life, often in the way you treat yourself, how you care for yourself, how you respect yourself and trust yourself. And it'll impact the rest of your life. It'll impact all kinds of relationships. It'll impact things that have been humming along. It doesn't mean they were working, they were humming along. And so there's a price to becoming embodied, and it can be its own really difficult, crunchy spot. But this idea that the soul path, the human path, is circular, it's spiral, it's not linear, I think really speaks to this embodiment lesson, because you come to the site of the wound, and usually you talk it out, you cry it out, you process it, you go through that, working on the wound, telling the truth about it, feeling it. And that is brave and it's courageous. And it feels good. It feels good to say it out loud and to get into it. But then there's another pass at that spiral. And now, how is what you've been talking about and healing and diving into for the last year, how is it informing you and inspiring change in you? How has it made you different? If you know better, how are you doing better? In our healing process, in our human journey, in the soul journey, there are threshold moments where we are asked to get really square with the ways that we know better, that we now are aware, that we now are conscious. Because being truthful about what we're conscious of will change our lives. It will change our behavior. It'll change how you move in the world. It'll change who you relate to, who you allow in. It'll change how you show up. And that's a really important part of the healing process, that there's a space where you've talked about it enough, you've processed it enough, and now there's a moment of embodiment, of consciousness raising, where you have to integrate it and become it. And that becoming it is why we're here. It's why we have incarnated into a human body. It's why the soul agreed to do this. When we become the changed version of ourselves, when we say, I know better, I am now aware, I can stop that pattern, I can choose differently, and then we do, we raise our consciousness, we raise our vibration. We get more congruent with our soul. And that is the purpose. That's why we're here. There's something so magnificently potent about being incarnated into a human body. It's so 3D and real. And yeah, that is the source of our suffering. But it's so potent and effective when we physically, viscerally experience something, when we can embody and become the next version of ourselves. The lesson learning becomes permanent. And that's why I say, when you tell yourself the truth, you can't unknow it. When you tell yourself the truth, it sets into motion an incredibly powerful consciousness raising force. Because even if you try to slow it down, you can't stop it. And I say the same for the embodiment process. When you get to a point where you know, I know differently, I have to do better, I know what I have to do, and I don't want to, and it's hard, and I'm nervous, and I'm scared, and my nervous system feels like it's gonna die, all of the things, but you know that you've got to step forward and be different. Act in accordance with your healing. Start to create better for yourself because you know better. It's such a magnificently powerful, potent threshold. And the soul loves these moments. Every experience is a teacher. Every experience you have is showing you where you are in your evolution. Every experience shows you where you are in your self-awareness, your healing journey, your consciousness journey. And I know that there are times that when a theme or a lesson reemerges, it can feel incredibly overwhelming and demoralizing because you mistake that moment as a sign or indication that you've backslid or you haven't come as far as you thought you had. But I invite you, when themes and lessons and patterns reappear, especially the ones that you feel like you've worked on, take a pause and ask the situation, what do I need to see here? What's mine? What awareness is this bringing me? Maybe you'll ask it, how am I meant to become more embodied in this experience? Is there a place where I'm not acting like a changed person? Is there a spot where I know the answer, I know the lesson, but I'm not living it? I'm not being completely honest with myself about it. And in that moment, when you uncover why the theme or the lesson has come back, be honest with what you find. Accept what you find and tell yourself the truth about that. And yes, that acceptance and that truth will create something on its own. It'll be a life of its own. It'll take on a life of its own. But that life is your life. That truth wants to give you your life, your most authentic life, your most true life. So our purpose, my friends, is just this. It's to meet each experience as a teacher, to feel the feelings you have in meeting the experiences. And as you're able, with some grounding and some courage, look for the ways that the experience is showing you what in you needs healing, what in you needs to be brought into congruence, the place where you're not acting like you know better, the spot where your sense of self wants to show up more vibrantly and potently in your own life. That's our purpose. To get to know who we are, to get to understand the places where there's work to do and healing to do and consciousness to raise, and then to lean into it. I know that everyone wants sexy life purposes, and I used to think that I could help people find those. How wrong I was. How wrong I was. Because your life purpose and my life purpose are not different. The circumstances of yours and mine are very different, and the ways we learn lessons are very different. But you're here to get conscious, and so am I. And you're here to become a changed version of you and offer that to the world, and so am I. There's something really noble and right and sacred about embracing not only your healing journey, but your journey as a soul in a human body. All of this is powerful and potent and deeply meaningful. Your life is propelling you toward congruence with your soul, toward authenticity, to beauty, to depth, to service and kindness. Your life is showing you how to become an extraordinary citizen of the universe. That's your purpose. Thank you for joining me here on the Intrepid Soul podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation and the work of your soul, join me over on Patreon at the Intrepid Soul Collective. There you'll find tons of resources and support connected to the conversations we have here to help you make your soul work practical and embodied. There are live sessions with me, bonus Q&As where you can go deeper with me and my guests, companion guided meditations and ceremonies, and so much more. Because we can't just talk about it, we've got to become it. Check out the show notes for details and links, and hit follow on this podcast. It'll keep new episodes at the top of your feed, and it helps me build the Intrepid Soul community. Until next time, take good care of yourself and your soul.